Most high-income households have no idea which level of wealth they're actually at, and that confusion quietly keeps them stuck, earning a great income while never actually getting ahead. They make $200,000 or more, and they just assume they're doing well. Yet, they can't tell whether they're genuinely building wealth or just spinning in place on a bigger paycheck. And I understand why. This is so confusing because nobody ever gives high earners a clear map of what building wealth actually looks like, stage by stage. The whole conversation is about making more money, with almost no honest discussion of the levels you move throughout as your income turns into actual wealth. But earning a high income and actually building wealth are two completely different things. And the gap between them is exactly where high earners get stuck, making great money for years with very little to actually show for it. Through years of working with high income households, I've mapped out the exact levels that people move through as they turn a strong income into real wealth. And I've seen precisely where most of them actually get stuck. So in this video, I'm going to break down the 6 levels of wealth for households earning $200,000 or more, what defines each one, and how to actually figure out exactly where you stand. This is all about seeing a map clearly so you can actually move up it. So the first level is where most high earners start, even when their income says they should be further along. So level 1 is stability. And this might sound basic, but I think it's where a surprising number of high income households get exposed. Stability means you have positive cash flow, no high interest debt dragging behind you, and a real emergency fund that can cover several months of expenses if life gets weird. Not a theoretical one, not money you hope will be there during the next bonus. Actual cash, sitting somewhere safe, ideally in a high yield savings account. That gives your household breathing room. And here's the part high earners don't always want to hear. Making $200,000 a year does not automatically mean you're stable. I have seen households with great income still feel like they are living paycheck to paycheck because every raise, bonus, promotion, or high income jump immediately gets absorbed by a bigger lifestyle. More house, higher car payment, more subscriptions, travel, convenience spending, private school, and everything else. None of those things are automatically wrong, but the problem is when your lifestyle increases so fast that even your income can't help. Without margin, everything else is fragile. You can have a great job, good house, good income, and still be one unexpected event away from undoing years of progress. So the first real milestone is not actually about how much you make. It's about how much you keep. To reach stability, you have to get honest about your cash flow. How much comes in? How much goes out? What is actually left after taxes, spending, debt payments, and savings? This is why every single household should know at least your numbers, whether it's simple or high-level numbers, or if you like the in-depth line by line. If you don't know these numbers, get familiar with them. Everyone should know generally what you're making, how much goes in, how much goes out, and where. Then you got to attack your high interest debt. If you're carrying credit card debt or other expensive debt, it is working against you every single month. Trust me, it is almost impossible to build real wealth if your past spending is still charging you interest. Then you build the emergency fund. That might be 3 months of core expenses. Or for others, especially families with variable income or one primary earner, it might be more. Once the foundations are locked in, your high income finally has a stable foundation to build on. So stability is the foundation. The next level is where your money starts working even while you're asleep. Level 2 is momentum. This is where you move from simply not falling behind to actively getting ahead. At this level, you are consistently investing a meaningful portion of your income every single month. Not just saving whatever happens to be left over. Not investing randomly when you remember. You have a real system where money is moving into investments on purpose. This is where high income becomes a genuine advantage. If you make $200,000 or more and you're investing consistently, the dollars can start to stack up quickly. But the key is it's gotta be consistent. A high income does not create momentum all by itself. A high income creates momentum only when extra income is actually captured and invested before lifestyle inflation eats it. This is where way too many people stall out. You're technically saving, but not in a way that creates real speed. You might invest some months, skip other months, contribute when a bonus hits, then spend the rest of your next raise before it ever touches an investment account. Momentum comes from automation. A portion of every single paycheck should be going to work before you even have the chance to spend it. Retirement accounts, Roth, backdoor Roth, HSAs, brokerage account, whatever fits your full tax picture. But the principle is the same. Money moves before your lifestyle expands. You usually want to start to prioritize the biggest tax advantages first. For high earners, that usually means your pre-tax 401k, HSA, getting that employer match, or maybe some other available benefits. Taxes do matter when you make a lot of money, so when you could save on that, you absolutely want to take advantage of it in most scenarios. Then as your income grows, your investing should grow too. If every raise becomes a new fixed expense, your wealth isn't actually accelerating. But if every raise increases your investing rate, that's where the engine starts to really turn. Consistent automated investing is what turns a high income into real momentum. So momentum can get your money working. And the next level is where you start to get some actual breathing room. Level 3 is flexibility. This is where your wealth starts to really change how you feel. At this point, you've invested enough assets that you are no longer completely dependent on the next paycheck to feel safe. You're not necessarily financially independent yet, but you have options. You can weather a job loss without panic. You could take a career risk. You could leave a toxic role. You could take more time with your family or make decisions from a place of strength instead of fear. That's what flexibility really means. It's not just a number on a net worth statement. It is the point where your investments start giving you choices that you didn't have before. Retirement accounts are great, and I love using tax advantage accounts wisely. But if all of your wealth is locked up until retirement, you might be building future security without much present flexibility. So a taxable brokerage account can help you bridge that gap. It gives you money that is invested but accessible before retirement age. It can support career changes, major life goals, tax planning opportunities, and long-term flexibility. To reach this level, you gotta keep investing consistently. But you also keep your lifestyle from expanding to consume everything that you earn. You don't need to live like a college student forever, but you do need to protect the gap between what you earn, what you spend, because that gap is the actual fuel. You also gotta have discipline through market ups and downs. Flexibility is not built by jumping in and out every time the market has headlines that get scary. It is built by staying invested, rebalancing when appropriate, and letting the plan work over time. This is where wealth really starts to improve your life, not the spreadsheets. Now that you have seen the first 3 levels, if you actually want figuring out exactly where you stand and how to move up, click that link below to start working with Flames, where we will walk through a plan built specifically on your situation. Okay, but let's keep going. Level 4 is independence. This is so cool because when people say financial freedom, this is where they get to start dreaming. This is where your investments could realistically cover your core living expenses. Not necessarily every dream vacation or luxury purchase or lifestyle choice, but your essentials, housing, food, insurance, healthcare, and more. Your basic family needs, the core life that you need to maintain. At this level, work becomes a choice rather than an actual requirement. That doesn't mean you have to quit your job. In fact, most people working at this level, they enjoy it. They like the mission, or they want to still build towards something that's bigger. But the emotional relationship changes because you're no longer working purely because you have to. To reach independence, years of consistent investing have to compound into a portfolio large enough to cover your core expenses. And this is where your baseline lifestyle matters enormously. If your household needs $80,000 a year to cover your core expenses, independence requires one number. If your household needs $200,000 a year just to maintain the basics, independence requires a very different number. That's why lifestyle inflation is so powerful. It does not just affect this year's budget. It raises the size of your portfolio you have to reach to hit independence. The high earners who reach this level are usually not the ones who never spend the money. They're the ones who are intentional. They know what matters. They spend there and they avoid letting every other income increase become a permanent expense. At this level, planning also becomes coordinated. Investments, strategy, taxes, withdrawals, insurance, estate planning, and account structure are all working together because once your assets are large enough to support your life, the question becomes, how do we protect this? How do we use it wisely? How do we make sure this plan actually holds up? So independence makes work optional. The next level expands that freedom to the life you actually want. Level 5 is freedom, and it goes way beyond covering your basic needs. This is where your investments can support your full desired lifestyle. We're talking travel, experiences, being generous, spending time with your family or hobbies or health, the things you actually want your money to do. And that's why I think this distinction matters, because some people technically reach independence, but they're still living in a scarcity mode. They have enough to cover the basics, but they do feel free to enjoy the wealth that they've built. Freedom is when your money can support a life that you genuinely are excited to live without depending on a paycheck. To reach this level, you need to know what your ideal life actually costs. A lot of people say they want financial freedom, but they've never actually defined that target. So what does it actually mean? Does it mean 2 big trips a year, helping out your kids, buying back your time, maybe going part-time or giving more, living life somewhere else, starting a business? If you cannot define the life, you're not going to be able to define the number. Once you know the target, you keep building and building beyond your basic independence. You continue that compounding interest into your investments, managing taxes, protecting the risk, and making sure your portfolio is aligned with the life that you want. But you also got to learn to enjoy the wealth along the way. The goal is not to die with the biggest possible spreadsheet. The goal is to use the money as a tool to build a better, more wealthy life. That is a big part of how I think about planning. Wealth is not just your net worth. It's your financial health, your physical health, mental, family health, and the ability to spend time in the ways that you actually reflect your values. Freedom is when wealth moves from security to possibility. And now that you've seen the 5 levels of wealth, let's bring everything together with the final level so you can see the full map and where you actually stand. All right, so level 6 is abundance. This is the highest level where you can have more than you could realistically spend on yourself. At this point, the questions change. It's no longer just, how do I build enough? It becomes, what do I want this wealth to accomplish? That might mean helping children or grandchildren. It might mean charitable giving, or maybe creating those incredible family experiences. It could mean funding causes that you care about and building a legacy that lasts way beyond your lifetime. At abundance, wealth is no longer mainly about personal security or lifestyle. It becomes all about impact. And this is where planning can get so meaningful. Estate planning matters, tax strategies, giving, family communication, your beneficiary designations, trusts, and so much more. This is how you prepare the next generation to become a part of the conversation. Because if your wealth has outgrown your own needs, the next job is to make sure you use it intentionally. So, how do you figure out where you stand? First, you got to be honest about your actual level, not based on your income, based on your cash flow, your debt, your emergency fund, invested assets. Second, you got to identify what is keeping you from that next level. Is it your lifestyle inflation? Not enough investing? Too much debt? No diversification across your assets? Maybe no plan. And third, focus relentlessly on the gap between what you earn, what you keep, and what you invest. That gap is really what moves you up every single level. The high earners who climb the fastest are usually not the ones with the flashiest income. They're the ones who stop measuring success by a salary and start measuring it by the wealth that they actually build. That's the whole map. Stability, momentum, flexibility, independence, freedom, and abundance. And wherever you are today, the next step is to not feel behind. The next step is to get a more clear, more organization, and start deliberately moving towards that next level. Now that you've seen the 6 levels of wealth for high income households and what defines each one and how to figure out where you stand, you got to stop guessing whether your income is actually turning into wealth. You need to start deliberately climbing towards that level that you really want to reach. If you want help figuring it out, where you stand, and building a plan to move up, hit that link below to work with Flames, where we will work through exactly how to get there and what you need for your own specific situation. I will see you in the next video.